Right before we jump into this video, I want to remind you, if you haven't signed up for the Phronos Photo email list, you can do so over on the website. Just click on the screen right now. That's going to take you over there. Look for the orange box, put your name, email address in it, hit send it, and I will send you a guide to capturing motion in low light situations. Jared Poland, PhronosPhoto.com here in Warsaw, Poland, testing out the Nikon D810. So this is a evolution over the Nikon D800. There are a lot of changes that I've talked about in my preview, which you can check out on the screen right here, but I am here to test it out. How is the ISO capability? Because it has gotten better over the last version of the camera. How's the focusing system? Because they've added the group area AF, and just overall, how does it work? What are the pros? What are the cons? The things I like, the things I don't like. So you're gonna see me going around taking pictures and occasionally talking to the camera, telling you these changes or these things that I like or don't like. So other than that, it's time to just go and shoot with the Nikon D810. So what's pretty cool is that this camera goes down to 64 ISO. It's really bright over here. So I switched to 64 ISO, and it's pretty amazing that we can go that low to shoot. It's going to give me some ultimate quality that you haven't seen in DSLRs before. So here is a quick observation with the D810. Now this thing shoots 6 frames a second. Now in some cameras, or some people think that that's not that fast, but it's also not that slow. You have to remember that this is a 36 megapixel camera. I'm shooting 14-bit uncompressed RAW files, which means that you're pushing about 75 megabytes per image through it. So 6 frames a second at that speed isn't that bad. But I want you to hear what 6 frames a second sounds like. So let's shoot off 6 of these people over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think that was 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. It sounded something like that, but that is what it sounds like if you could hear it. But those are 6 quick pictures. It's not that slow, but again, it's not that fast, but not bad for the size of the files that you're putting through this camera. So what's interesting is, you know, I'm used to shooting with a D4S, which has a vertical grip on it built in, so that when I shoot vertically, I don't have a problem doing anything. I don't have to go like this, which is kind of awkward to shoot with. Now, for me personally, if I was to go with this camera, I'm going to add a vertical grip so I can have the extra battery in there, as well as shoot vertically like this. Well, I'm not gonna be able to shoot that way. This is how I have to shoot with this camera. And it's also kind of awkward to do that. So I'm just waiting for the balloons to all stand straight up. It's kind of blowing the guy around, which is kind of interesting. So we got these breakdancers back here. Now one of them just came up to me to ask what we were doing. So I want to shoot this, and they didn't want photos taken. But what I said to the guy in our English, between Polish and English, I said, I will send you everything that I take. You can have them for free. Just let us shoot. So he was like, yes. So just offer something. And then I gave him a couple of Zlotsky as well, just so it wasn't a lot, but I gave him some here. Just so, hey, I'm here doing this. I explained it, and I said, you know what? I'll give you everything. Let you download it and use it for whatever you want, because I'm reviewing. It's perfect for that. So now that we've got the breakdancing going to go on, I'm going to do some photos. I'm also going to switch off into video, and we're going to do the 1080 at 60 frames a second so that we can slow it down later and get some good stuff. Now, keep in mind, I don't have a image stabilizer with me. It would have been better to be on a monopod or something like that for video, but it is what it is, so let's shoot it. All right, so to do the video, I know that 60 frames a second is what I want to have, so that's what we're going to do. I just go into my menu, which I already set it up so I can get there quickly. I switch it to 60 frames a second at 1080, and we're off and shooting. So here's a little quick tip for you. Because I'm shooting at 60 frames a second, 1080 at 60 frames a second, I want my shutter speed to be at 1/125th of a second because that's twice the frame rate, and that's what it should be. That's going to help us with editing when we slow it down for the slow motion. So generally when I'm shooting video, I want to have some kind of stabilizer, like a monopod, tripod, something to stabilize the video. But I don't have that, but I've got my bag right here. I can rest the camera on it, and it can be as stable as possible right there. So that's a pretty good idea. So this camera lets you shoot in auto ISO for video. Now I like that because I can set my shutter speed and aperture, and then it goes ahead and smoothly takes care of any changes it needs to do with the ISO. Now that's great if you're going from a dark area to a light area, but unlike this, the light isn't changing. So I'm better off locking my exposure and shooting video and not worrying about the ISO doing auto changes on its own. So that's why I switch back into manual. I set my shutter speed, set my aperture, and then I check my histogram for video for that spike right in the middle to get the right exposure for shooting video. So now we're gonna go ahead and get that. So I just got done shooting some of the breakdancers, and I wanted to push the D810 to its limits in terms of how many shots I could take before it filled the buffer. Now keep in mind, I'm shooting 14-bit uncompressed RAW files with this. I have a 32 gig SanDisk card that is, you get 90 megabytes a second transfer rate on it. So I shot 22 frames in a row of the breakdancer spinning around or doing their thing before the camera officially stopped. So that's not bad at all. If you have to hold down the shutter for 22 frames in a row, you're probably missing something. You may want to shoot video at that point. So this camera held up very well, shooting 22 frames before it filled the buffer. So here's one thing that I found that I'm not too happy with the Nikon D810, and I also noticed it in my D4S. So right now I am in AFC, AF continuous, in the group area focus. Now when I hold down the button on the side to switch to AF single, it stays in group area focus, which is okay because it's staying in the same thing. But now I'm going to switch out of group area focus because on single, I like to be in the single focus mode. So AF single now. Now what I'm doing is taking my finger off as if I was shooting single, where you would hear the beep. So you hear the beep. Now I want to switch quickly because the action changes and I want it to be in continuous. So I switch back to AFC. But the problem is, it's now stuck in the single focus mode, but in continuous. What that means is it's not going to track my subject. Now, if you remember, when I first started in continuous, I was in group area, but now I'm not. So that's something that I'm not too happy with. I wish that it stayed in group area, and when I switched it over to single, no matter what it was that I came back to, it should have stayed the same. So that's something that I hope Nikon fixes. So here's a feature that I like with this Nikon D810. They have an OLED display inside where the numbers now show up in white on a black background, where in my D4S they show up green, and it's not as easy and crisp to see. This OLED inside is extremely crisp and bright. Even in bright daylight, I'm still able to see with my eye up to it how those numbers are. It's perfect, it's great, I like that function. So button layout is something I want to talk about next. The D810 is laid out very, very well. Now it's very similar to all the other Nikons. You're going to find that the back of every Nikon is basically the same, so that you can go from the D3300 all the way up to a D4S and know where everything is. That is a really good layout that I like with the Nikons. Now with the D810 here, they have the ISO up here on the dial, the white balance, the quality, and the metering modes. Everything's right there up on the top. You can also change from single frame to continuous low to continuous high to quiet mode to timer mode. Everything is right on the outside of the camera where you need it to be. Now that's what separates a pro camera from the consumer cameras. With consumer cameras, you have to go into the menu to control everything. With pro cameras, you have everything that you need on the outside of the camera so that you can independently control it. So other than that, the buttons are right where they need to be. If you've ever used a Nikon, they're really easy to know where everything is, or if this is your first one that you're picking up, you're going to pick it up pretty quick where everything is. So that's something I like with this D810. So here's something to keep in mind when you're shooting at 1080 at 60 frames a second with this camera. You're only going to get 10 minutes of recording instead of the 20 minutes that you get in 1080 at 24 frames a second. Now the reason is 24 frames to 60 frames, it's almost 3 times as many frames. So that's a lot of extra data that you're pumping onto the card. That's why you can only get 10 minutes out of that. So keep that in mind. So I just finished up shooting for the last few hours here in Warsaw, Poland with the Nikon D810, and I'm really enjoying how this camera is working. One of the things I didn't say earlier is that this is a field review. So it's more like a hands-on field review, and that's what we're doing out here. So one of the things that I noticed is, being that it doesn't have a vertical grip and I'm so used to shooting with one, I miss having it. So I highly recommend picking up a vertical grip because you're gonna get extra battery life out of it, and also it's gonna allow you to shoot vertically without a problem. But other than that, we've already talked about a lot of the things that I liked with the camera and some things that I didn't like, but this really was just a field test, and I think it passed with flying colors, and it better have passed for the price point, and I think people are going to like this camera. So if you're looking for one, definitely go ahead, pick one up, because it is a workhorse. It's much better than the D800 in my opinion because of the better focusing and the better ISO capability. So from Warsaw, Poland, that's almost my name, Jared Poland, FroKnowsPhoto.com. See ya. Excuse me, and then, excuse me, I don't know that in Polish, excuse me. Move that way for me, thank you, awesome, there you go, good, all right, thank you, all right, here we go. Why are you right on me? And you're almost shooting, everybody's looking at me. I just want to know how be easy for me to see. So I'm liking that going on, and yes, can I help you? The ISO myself, and that way, we were able to, everybody's still looking at me, but that one I crushed. Because they're all stopping. They don't understand English because they speak Polish. I don't speak Polish. I'm speaking a foreign language. So what's happening is they're like, what is this guy saying? I don't understand him, but he's really cool. Look at his hair. It's so big. But then, can you do it in Polish? All right. Polish. Now I'm going to speak in Polish.